In our last session, we read a letter from a man who wondered what consequence to use with his son Colin, who had a tendency to procrastinate the completion of assigned school projects. I first discussed the purpose of consequences, and now we'll discuss Colin's specific circumstances. So we understand that a consequence is effective because it makes the wrong choice inconvenient or unpleasant for the child. This means you have to choose a consequence that is suited specifically to Colin's tastes, because what is one person's poison is another person's paradise. As parents, we often choose consequences that would be deterrents for us, but so what? Our children are not us. We need to know what they like and don't like, and consider what would be inconvenient for them when choosing consequences. I don't personally know Colin, so we'll have to explore more than one possibility here. Let's suppose that Colin is a bit of a perfectionist, and that getting a bad grade on a project would bother him. So a good teaching consequence for him would involve requiring him to go to bed on time. Then he wouldn't be able to finish his project and he'd get a poor grade. He'd hate that. And the next time he gets an assignment, he'll remember that bad grade and be motivated to prepare earlier than he has in the past. To be fair, you should tell him now ahead of time that this is what will happen if he puts off the next assignment to the last minute. One of my children used to wait to work on his English composition assignments until the night before they were due. One evening, he brought me a blank sheet of paper and asked me to help him write an essay. I asked him when it was due, and he sheepishly responded, "Tomorrow." I suggested that from my experience, all good writing required multiple rewrites, and I was not willing to invest my time in a last-minute, poorly written effort. I said that if he were willing to work on a paper as soon as it was assigned, working on multiple drafts, I'd be glad to help him. The natural consequences of his procrastination were the absence of my participation and the C he received on his paper. He hated the consequences. He hated the C. He hated the fact that I wouldn't help him at the last minute. He hated the sense of helplessness that resulted from not being able to pull a rabbit out of the hat at the last minute. But that was the entire point, wasn't it? That he hated it all. That's the whole point of consequences, that kids will be inconvenienced by them, that they'll hate them, so that they won't want to make the choices associated with those consequences. And the consequences worked with my son, because he hated the consequences of his decision. He decided not to make that decision again. So he learned the lesson. He changed his work habits and learned to write considerably better. But there is an additional important secret to be learned here about consequences, and we'll talk about that in our next session.